Hey there, why you should. In case you've been living under a rock, or just not following me very closely, I've just got a new job. And at this new job, story time, instead of, we work with Macs. We work with a lot of Apple products, because it is a mobile developer, and, well, iOS is pretty big. It's actually... It's kind of funny. This is not entirely a very known fact, maybe. Or maybe it is. I don't know if... I guess it's known for people who are in the field. But iOS users, Apple users, iPhone users, and iPad users spend more money than Android users. It's just a fact. And even though the market for Android, there's way more Android devices in the world than Apple, anything Apple at this point. But the Apple market still makes more money. I mean, they spend more money than the entirety of Android. And this is pretty staggering because it's like 60-30 if I remember correctly. I'm not perfect on the numbers, so do not quote me because I'm not perfect on the numbers, but it's something along those lines. And that's kind of, whoa, okay. So yeah, you have to develop for iOS, and I've never owned any Apple products because I don't really like the way that they do things, for many reasons which we won't go into right now, but I'm kind of an Apple hater. I'm kind of an iOS hater, and the whole methodology of making everything sleek and pretty and not actually allowing you to do anything that you want, not being in complete control of everything, and I just don't like that. And though I've never owned such a product before, I kind of knew that I wouldn't like it. Yes. Sorry for that. But I've never actually had one. And now I have a Mac at work. And I'm also working with iPads, but iPads it's less problematic. I'm working with a Mac. And boy, is it different from Windows. Whoa, is it different from Windows. And my productivity is so low right now, and I constantly find myself at odds with the system, because it is a very different... It's similar in a lot of ways, but it's just very different in what you're supposed to do with it. Yes, it still has files, and it still has applications and programs, but it is very different in many different ways, and it gets some really strong getting used to. And that's really what I want to talk about today in such a... I think it's mostly applicable really for when you switch from Mac to Windows or from Windows to Mac, because those are the big systems. Clearly, you know, Linux, Linux also exists, and there's also other things like SteamOS or whatever. But it is, SteamOS is actually Linux, but everything is Linux. Everything that isn't Windows is Linux, but never mind. The thing is that when you have such a paradigm shift, you have really two ways of going at it. And I think that's something that you should really consider. And whenever you're faced with a problem, you should put it in one of two solutions. And the one solution is try to conform it and fight it until it's what you're used to. And the other thing is getting used to it yourself. And I feel like from what I've talked to with people at work, it is usually just one of these two methodologies. You usually most people just go on, I'll just get used to everything. Screw it, I'll just get used to everything anew. And the other thing is just, I will fight you every step of the way, which I'm, specifically in this case, more inclined to do. But I do understand that it's not the most correct thing to do every time. And I really think you should look at every obstacle in your path and try and put it in one of these two baskets. And I'm actually trying to do this right now. Up to a point. Again, I'm very much into trying to make it work like Windows, like I'm used to, or trying to find alternative solutions. But I tried this for a while, and at some point, I have to just bring myself to say, okay, I'm not finding a really great solution, I'll just get used to it. Or some things that I'm actually giving up already. And let me tell you, I've managed to find some very useful things. I mean, I'm really used to using WinKey-R, which is run in order to run something very specific, and I have a ton of shortcuts. I've actually talked about this, I think, in one of the initial why you shoulds. I talked about shortcuts. You could go look that one up if you really want to. I talked about, I really use WinKey-R in order to do pretty much anything. I don't like using the mouse for anything. And in a Mac, a lot of things are you're expected to actually do them with the mouse. There's also a lot of buttons that are missing, like the delete button just doesn't exist. And there's excessive use. In Windows, you have uses for Control, uses for Alt, and not so many uses for the Win key, the key that looks like Windows, the symbol of Windows. In the Mac, you have Control, Alt is actually Option, it's called Option. You have Control, and you have the button that is Command. It's called Command, it looks like weird. So you have these three buttons, and they're used in various conjunctures pretty much everywhere. So it's really difficult to get to think about stuff, and I've been faced with a lot of things that are just frustrating. Some of them I try to change, some of them I just give up. The home and end keys work very differently. I found a script that kind of puts them back to what they do, which I've done. The way you use files, you don't really. There are files, but you're not expected to use them in such in a orderly fashion. You're supposed to. You can't create a file. The Windows Explorer, how to actually look at files, is called the Finder there, because you're not meant. It's not the explorer of your files. You just find things. You find what you're supposed to find, and that's it. And you can't actually right-click in New and create a new file, and then you can't change its extension. I'm pretty positive you can change extensions of files in some form or fashion, but you can't create a new file as easily as you do in Windows. And a lot of those things are really annoying, and you have to get used to them. Or you fight them and you change them. I actually found a program called Alfred, which allows me to also do these macros. It's a little bit different. Instead of Win key R, I'm doing Alt space, and then I can do all these commands that I used to have in Win key R. A lot of other things, like actually replacing Control and the Control and the Command key, changing them up. Also, like Enter, instead of entering that file or approving of something, it does rename in most cases. And instead of it, you need to push like Command O to enter a file, which is really weird to me, but I'm getting used to it, and I'm getting used to doing things differently. So that's really it today. Learn how to when you have something that's very different from what you're used to, know when to fight it, and know when to let it go and relearn and adapt. And that's really what I have for you today. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll probably have a lot more things coming from work, because it's a ground for new things, you know. It's a new thing. But yeah, thanks all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.